Hi, in this tutorial, we're going to be going over imaginary numbers as solutions of quadratic equations. So in this tutorial, you'll learn how to express square roots of negative numbers in terms of I, and how to solve quadratic equations with imaginary solutions. So the imaginary unit I equals the negative square root of 1, where 1 squared equals negative 1. Now the square root of a negative number, such as the negative square root of negative b, equals the negative square root equals the square root of b times negative 1, which equals the square root of b times the square root of negative 1, or the square root of b times I, or I times the square root of b. So let's do an example. Let's write the square root of negative 36 as a multiple of I. So that's just like saying the square root of 36 times negative 1. So we can write that as the square root of 36 times the square root of negative 1. Well, the square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So that's our answer. Now let's write the multiple of negative 50. Well, that's the same as 50 times negative 1, or the square root of 50 times the square root of negative 1. We can break down the square root of 50 into 25 times square root of 2 times the square root of negative 1. The square root of 25 is 5 times the square root of 2, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So this gives us 5i square root of 2. Now a set of complex numbers is the set of numbers in the form a plus bi. Now the real number a is called the real part, and the real number b is called the imaginary part. So this is the real and this is the imaginary. Some quadratic equations have complex solutions that are imaginary numbers. So let's do an example. Let's solve x squared minus 2x plus 2 equals 0. Well, we know our quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So now we have x equals negative 2, negative 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times 1, all over 2 times 1. So now we can simplify this as 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, all over 2. So now we can simplify this as 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 4. Now we can simplify this as 2 plus or minus square root of 4 times negative 1 over 2, which gives us 2 plus or minus square root of 2 square root of 4 times the square root of negative 1 over 2. So now we get 2 plus or minus 2i over 2. Now if we factor 2 out of there, we get 2 times 1 plus or minus I divided by 2. We can cross these out to get 1 plus or minus I. So that's our answer. So in this tutorial, you learned how to express square roots of negative numbers in terms of I, and how to solve quadratic equations with imaginary solutions. Now try and solve problems in our imaginary numbers as solutions of quadratic equations workbook. For more help, sign up for online tutoring. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be going over graphs of quadratic equations. Thank you.